Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising such notice in the Home News Tribune, the Asbury Park Press, the Board Office, the schools, and on Cablevision Channel 118 and Verizon Bios Channel 24, and by filing such notice with the Township Clerk. This meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, September 10, 2019. The Board will take formal action on payment, bills, and other agenda items. Mr. Mayor, please.
The Old Bridge Township Board of Education acknowledges that the law of this state establishes that members of the public, including members of the board, have the right to record public board meetings using audio or video recording devices, provided that that act of recording does not interfere with the business of this public board meeting. Therefore, the board makes it known that any such recording is to be considered the private recording of the individual and in no manner represents the official record of this board. The board therefore takes no responsibility for such a private recording and completely disavows any future use.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Roll call, please.
DeCaro?
Here.
Freeman? Here. Dunn? Alice Foster?
Here.
Glenn? Reed?
Here.
Singh? Solakowski?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Quorum exists.
Can we please rise for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. May I please have a volunteer to do the Code of Ethics corner? Thank you. And we'll have a approval of minutes, and we're going to have some recognition next month.
Yeah, so we have one item on there, we're gonna have another one in the hopper, two, and then maybe a special presentation underneath the superintendent's report.
Okay.
I have a question about the minutes. Under the roll call, it says Bollinger is absent, and then it's Reed for the following. Am I reading that wrong? No. Under the agenda session, the agenda session roll call.
Always tell me the witness session.
Okay.
It's minutes. You have her, it says Bollinger is absent, but then on the other, the subsequent roll calls, it says.
And you voted yes.
That was absent. Yeah, yeah, it's just that, probably just to change the check mark. Thank you.
Okay, are we gonna have any special committee reports next month?
Week.
Next week? Oh, I'm sorry. We're gonna back it up a little bit to superintendent.
So just something I want to put under superintendent's report conversation for this meeting. The public who's here should have in front of them, and the board members have, instructional council. One of the tasks we asked them to look at is the calendar. And this is something they took into consideration for last year, the 2020-2021 calendar. There were two recommendations before you. The instructional council also invites members from the public and parents to be part of the process. You have two there. I'd like a discussion from the board and to choose which one we'd like to have on the agenda for approval for next week. If we need more time, then we can do it next month. We'll just start the conversation today.
So did the instructional council recommend one, that is in order of their recommendation?
I believe they're in order of recommendation. It's one of those years when Labor Day comes late, so there's really no great opportunity at the beginning of September that anybody that really loves. Both recommendations require at least the staff to be here before Labor Day, and recommendation number 1 as the students returning before Labor Day.
And ending June 18th
I like that better.
versus the
Just
25th.
Right.
Graduation would have to be on the 28th.
Yeah, I, just from that perspective, I prefer that in the recommendation one.
But the other difference in getting out earlier is that week in November. Recommendation number 2 has them off the whole week. And recommendation 1 has staff in on election day? An in-service day
Yeah.
on Tuesday, like it is this year.
Dave, I'm sorry, you might have said it, but are they in preference order or just in?
I believe they're in preference order, from my communications with the church.
Are there any other differences?
I will go with number 1.
In Feb,
There are 3s.
Now, there's something I do want you to consider, something the board asked me to do over the course of the summer. And I haven't put it on here because I wanted the board's flavor for it. So, we've been asked by members of different cultural groups to consider holidays beyond the ones that, are recommended. We don't even acknowledge on the calendar religious holidays. What I see here, we call them spring breaks or so therefore. And to reiterate to the board, the reason why we even have them on there, aside from those that are federal holidays, because there's other federal and state holidays we don't have off from school, is because the overwhelming number of staff that would be absent and making it operate a school district of 8,500 students and 1,100 plus staff, that if there's a majority of which are Christian, second most popular religion we have is Judaism, the amount of absences we have on those days respectively would make it difficult to find enough substitutes to safely and effectively operate a school. So I met with local members of our Muslims association or group and asked if the board would consider 2 dates, Eid Fitr, and I know that you're my, Ms. Keeler is my cultural advisor for the department that she oversees, and if I say anything terribly wrong, just let me know. And Eid Adha, and
They're both Eid.
What's that?
They're both Eid.
Yes,
Eid.
they're both Eids, different Eids. I do know they come 2.5 months, the second comes 2.5 months after the other, and represents the pilgrimage to Mecca. So the consideration that you have to take in is that there's 2 and they always move. They're always move towards the beginning of the year. So in 2021, which would, when they would take place on this calendar, one would be May 13th, Eid Fitr, and the other would be July 19th, 20th, July 19th. So obviously the July date won't affect the calendar. The following year, 2022, it's May 2nd for Eid Fitr, and Eid Adha is July 9th, is the first day of that. So it's one day that we would recognize. So eventually, both dates will fall within the calendar over time. So they'll progress to when they affect the school calendar. And then, looking at our next population would be the Hindu population. Diwali is on November 14th of 2020, which is Saturday, which doesn't pose put your calendar. The following year, 2021, it would be on, which is a calendar we don't have before us, would be on a Thursday, which would fall most likely during teachers convention, conference anyway. Because once you do it, you can't go backwards, take away. So all 3 of them really don't have a major consequence to the calendar now, but eventually they would. I spoke to other districts. I spoke to the superintendent of Sayreville. They do recognize them all, and And one of the feelings from the parents that I spoke to was, it's not so much that, you know, there's two things. It's not so much that the students who celebrate these religious days, they also are recognize that Old Bridge is diverse, and they have friends who are Christian, they have friends who are Jewish, they have friends who are non-denominational, and when it's a Christian holiday or a Jewish holiday, they go to their house because they're all from school to celebrate their friend's culture. But when it's their turn to recognize their holiday and all that they're proud of, they can't invite their friends to do it unless their friends take a day off take a day off from school to do so. That's one angle of it. The second is it puts students in a difficult situation sometimes, you know, mostly at the high school, where you can still get an excused absence, but choosing between, you know, coming in for a day where it might be something important going on, you know, a lab, a bio lab, or something that you don't want to miss because it puts you in a difficult situation when you do have to prepare or take an exam based upon it, that you don't want to miss that, so you forego having your religious experience with your family in school. And that was kind of the takeaway from Cerebral. Edison doesn't have those up yet, but I think their holidays are similar as to what they celebrate. I couldn't find it on there, actually. That's not.
So-
Connection.
So if I followed all of that, I realize the holidays are gonna move,
Right.
in, coming years,
I think
but it's a total of three days? If every
at some
holiday
point,
falls?
you could have a total of 3 days.
That was my question, so if they all fall on a school day, it's a total of 3 days?
Ms. Keeler, does Diwali move?
Yes,
So it moves kind of like that, so it could be.
I'm not 100% sure, but it is generally within October and November.
All right, but, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, Diwali
Kinda like-
is generally,
kind of
and they,
Easter, Passover,
correct,
right. But they
Yes.
don't, they move, stays within that season,
correct.
whereas the Eids seem to, they can move 360.
Yeah, and I'm not totally familiar with the Muslim religion, but I know with the Hindu religion, with Diwali, it's 9 days prior to Diwali, and then it ends at that particular time, which is Diwali. So, and yeah, it's generally in November.
Anybody?
So is that's not reflected on this calendar?
No, so not reflecting this calendar, so the greatest impact on this calendar that's before you, is if you included it, would be 2021, May 12th or 13th. 12th opens it, which I believe is the day that's recognized, 13th closes it. So those are school days, so one of those days would be a closed day, and then without it changing anything else, it would push back the last day of school to, you know, if we had no snow days, to the 21st, and.
If we don't go over something.
If we don't go over, wait, if you go over, there's other way, or after you take them up. Then you know, you have to plan at least for graduation, high school graduation, to get the 22nd.
So this year it's only one day.
This year's.
I know what you're saying,
Right.
once we do it, we
Yeah, you
can't
can't
go
take it
back.
backwards.
But for the calendar in front of us, it's one day.
And just that the committee didn't have that information when we
No.
did this.
This was a group that came forward afterwards.
Yeah, because I mean, I had spoke to them, and, you know, they were very, one of their biggest concerns was the lack of, you know, yes, they can take their kids out of school for that day and have an excused absence, but they were very concerned about, like you had said, their children missing, you know, whatever was going on in school that day, and that was a big concern for them. You know, they know that they could take their kids out that day, but, so, you know, and I kind of understand that. So, I lean towards it, but then it tends to, you know, it depends on how it works with how everything else works.
So it's a lot to consider. I mean, so we're a district that celebrates our diversity and recognizes diversity.
Actually, that's what I was just thinking.
can't go back and ask the committee to, look at it, or is it too late for us to
We
do that?
can, we don't,
I mean, I'd
this
like
is
to
only
get,
the
you know,
first, this past this calendar that we're in right now was a 2-year calendar that we asked the board, I was instruction council to put together. And in years past, the year calendar for 2020-21 would not be passed until January, February.
Although it's much more
It
convenient.
is,
to have it
I already have
yeah,
people,
absolutely.
I already have
Yeah,
staff members
yeah,
asking me about
yeah, 'cause I know people
the
really
calendar for
try to
2020
plan.
21
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
Well, if you're gonna send it back to the instructional council, what's the purpose of that?
I-
What would change? If we
Well-
say yes,
Right.
and it's an extra day, what's gonna change on here?
Well, that's
except
it.
for that?
I mean, I just know because before I've sat in on there's a lot of dialogue that goes back and forth when they select this. They go back and forth and they do that because it's staff as well as there's usually parents, there's usually PTA. So there's discussion that they have that comes up with this. And if they didn't have that information, they might have had other discussions about it. Had
Right,
it come
that
up.
could,
No, I understand that, but I'm trying to figure, like, what else, what would change? You
who knows?
Well, you're somewhat
You
limited
can't
in
change
what
Labor
your
Day.
options are. You
yeah,
know,
that's what I'm
when
saying,
you're
it's
looking
not
at the
like you
calendar,
gave,
so when they look at it, you're either starting, in this calendar, you really have no choice but to start before. To then the conversation goes to, well, staff before, students after, or everybody before, there's a limit to how much you can adjust on a calendar.
What groups does this encompass?
This is a Muslim group, and we also take into consideration, based upon our numbers, included the predominant Hindu holiday.
So, if I was just curious, Muslim, Hindu, or pretty much Canadian.
Well, see, we have it based upon languages. We don't have a breakdown based upon religion because there's a separation of religion. So if you assume that, then you're somewhere around 8% of the population fall into both of these.
I'm just gonna stop this for 1 second. Do we not have enough chairs?
No, but I'm good.
Are you?
And I take one of the big ones.
Take it.
Do you mind if I say something about the calendar, though? I am on instructional council. Just wanted to pitch in a few things.
Okay, yeah, sure.
This was, as Dr. Oker pointed out, with this calendar, it was kind of limiting. So September has to look one of those two ways pretty much to make sense. So if you were adding one day, you're looking at probably taking it from spring break, which then you don't have the week, or adding it on to the end of the year, which could cause problems. But the bigger issue would be, say you were adding the 3 moving forward, just hypothetically, you would have to go with option 1 and put the rest of the days in June in order to have graduation in June. Or eliminate spring break and basically be looking at doing that permanently. That's just because I know one of the things in instructional council, when we sat down to look at it, was like, well, okay, well, this month is obvious, this one's obvious, this one's obvious, and there weren't a lot of variables to look at. But that's completely up to you guys to make
Yeah,
this
so I have-
decision. I want no part of it. One thing that we had discussed in instructional council, and I know I've discussed with administration, is the snow day schedule. Something that often happens is we don't go over our snow days until we're past some of the dates where we could make it up. So once we go over the limit, you're looking at adding that Monday in June and taking away from spring break. Something that has been proposed would be if we use any snow days before a certain point, we come in and make it up on maybe President's Day. Because what often happens is, we're fine through December, through most of January, and then we get that snowstorm in February or March, where it's too late to make it up on those other days, and that's when we get hit. So that's, especially if it is getting sent back to the drawing board, that's something that I know has been discussed. I don't know if it's been in front of the board yet.
I know it's something East Brunswick did last
Thank you.
year.
Yes.
And I do know from my friends that are on the board there, they received a lot of staffing issue concerns with that. So staff members who had plans, just saying, you can tell everybody you can't make plans, but, that 3-day weekend, President's Day, and then they wanted to give them the day back because then they didn't use the snow days in East Brunswick. So they used one snow day, took away And it happened to be, President's Day weekend was the next weekend. So it wasn't like the snow day was, the snow day was on, like, you know, whatever day it was a week before President's Day weekend. They took away President's Day weekend, and then we didn't have any more significant snowfalls, and they gave the day back. It was a little disgruntled. That's it, that's, you know, so it's a good point, but you know, everything has its, and we're already usually bombarded with, you know, requests for days when we have school anyway. I do have the Sayreville, and again, it's just like we're all saying, it's their last day of school. They have 4 in-service days. The first day, the second day, the same day in November as we do, the 3rd, but their last day of school is an in-service day. So the last day for students is on the 23rd, or Wednesday of 2021. The last day for staff is on the 24th, 2021, and I'm not aware of when they graduate, the high school graduates and where. I only know they can't graduate before the last day of school. So, probably, you know, they probably, you know, either, you know, where they graduate, anybody here from Seattle? They graduate on the football field or, so.
Obviously, no one culture is in favor of it. We're representing now probably 4 biggest cultures in Oakwood. What about smaller ones that might come forward and say they want representation?
These are all things to consider. Again, the board asked me to meet with the group, and asked to bring to the board their feelings and their thoughts, bring them to you. Again, if you'd like to consider it and, you know, voice your concerns or thoughts or feelings the way you want to go back to your board president, and she can relay that information to me. If we need to have further discussion, we can do so at the next agenda meeting and put on action for,
January, we start to get a little sketchy.
Oh, you will.
For me, I'd like it in by December.
That's a problem. We can certainly make a decision by then.
Where's vacation again this year?
24th. So,
Can I put one more thought out? We've been a year ahead on the calendars to really get a snapshot of the impact. You might want to have instructional council right away get to work on the one for next year to see when the days start to fall during the year, what the impact's going to be. Because every year is different. You know, Labor Day on the 7th is, you know, only happens once every X number of years. So, like I think President Cali mentioned, once you add them, it's hard to take them back.
Right.
So it's easy to add when it's one day.
I do remember there were a couple of years when my kids were in school that we started before Labor Day.
we've had it in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
For the staff, I don't think we've had it for the students yet.
No, well, not in the past 5 years. We have had it when the students went back before Labor Day. Yeah, years ago. I don't go back far back. I only go back to Dan Rodriguez, and we definitely had kids in school. In my time. So, all right, so we table this, and you guys want to think about it, and then, like Mr. Citadino said, then send me a text or an email, and,
Do you want the motion from this agenda?
Yes.
we'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For this participation in the conversation.
Mr. O'Neill, you sure you don't want to take one of those rolling chairs?
No, I think this will inspire speed, I hope. I don't think people like, especially wearing red, I don't think people like
You can come
it.
sit next to me, Tim, it's okay.
Okay, all right, so, now we're back to, are we gonna have any special committee reports? I don't think so, right? No. Okay.
We did set up the first curriculum meeting of the year on October 3rd, and the reason why, because of the open houses that we have at both high schools. And he won't be able to park. So he's decided on the first, which is a Thursday.
Right.
You can make that one.
And we have also, we're not combining the committees, and we're not combining the meetings, but we're having them consecutively, both on the third. So curriculum will be first at 7, and then technology will be right after that.
Bring your pajamas, you have to stay late.
Well, listen, if we do each in an hour, you know, that's.
Please pass them back to the public.
Yes,
That poll has cold ones.
that way. All the candy goes that way. Anyway, but I think everybody, well, the committee members, got the email, but for everybody else, that's the way it's gonna stay. Does anybody have any comment or question or problem with that?
It's gonna stay like that consecutively for all of the meetings?
Yes.
Well, right through up to December.
Correct. So we're just 1 hour curriculum, get it done.
Yeah, we're gonna have one more regular meeting in November, nothing in December because of the holidays and all that stuff.
Mr. Solakowski, what, I don't understand why you said just through December.
Because in January, it's just a hundred board.
That's true, but the reason we're, right, yeah, that's true, okay, all right. Anyway, for the next few months, yes, they will both be on the same,
You're welcome.
okay, so I'm opening up for hearing residents on agenda items only. Anybody? Anybody? No, only one's going twice, okay. So we're gonna close that portion. There'll be policy, so we just have one item under policy, and that's the second reading of the entrance age.
I know this is the second reading, so I guess I didn't look out and have it.
Just ask away. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's, where it says preschool, as long as the child, attains the age of 3, but it doesn't give a date as to when.
It's October 1st.
I don't, when I was looking at it today, I was looking at it, it didn't say
What's it?
date.
No, we're not talking about, we're talking about kindergarten.
No, I think it was the preschool.
Well, the preschool's when you turn 3.
But it's not by a certain date?
No.
Mr. Carroll, it's,
Whenever you turn 3.
it's also, this is preschool disabled,
Yes.
so the special ed regulations, well, if you're gonna be 3, you're asking.
That's why sometimes we'll come to
Before the
you,
end of the year.
we'll come to you in January or February saying we need a paraprofessional or so forth because we have an influx of 3-year-olds who just turned 3. And if they turn 3 on May 15th,
They start.
they start.
Okay. Is that part of the policy change?
No.
Yeah, it was just something that I was reading and it was always fine and I was like, wait a minute.
Curriculum and professional development. Any questions or comments? Okay, athletics. Are we gonna have anybody in there? Not that finance. I do need a motion to remove item 1 under finance, please. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Reed,
Yes.
Solakowski.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
Ellis Foster.
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
Resolution
And then we'll have items Two, that's on the page, okay. 2 through 11 next week. Any questions or discussion? Okay, non-certificated personnel office, there's nothing. Okay. And operational as well. Non-certificated personnel, other, items 1 through 9. So we have a couple of retirements. Mr. Solakowski?
Yes.
Certificated personnel. I need a motion to move items 1 through 3. Thank you. Second, please. Thank you. Any discussion? No? Okay, roll call, please.
DeCraro,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Ellis Foster,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Solakowski.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Resolutions 1, 2, 3 pass.
So 4 and 5, we have nothing.
Correct. Number 6, changes Kelly. I'm sure that there will be some highlighted areas there, and additional names and changes, which then impacts number 7.
Yep. Okay. And. oh, 34.
Number 8, is attachment D2, am I, is that there? Am I not reading it right? Should be.
No, I don't have that one yet.
You don't have
I don't have that one. Number 8 I don't have. And we added the other D2, that's why it's kind of misnomer.
Say
So it'll be
D2 is
D3, but I don't have it.
It wasn't making sense. Okay, that'll be added.
So why are there 2 details?
No, she's missing something to add to the detail.
Is that right, Joanne?
The D2 that I have, it's the 6th period, which I just got today, you would have added them. But I had already numbered.
Labeled it, okay, so it'll, that number,
Yes.
that will, got it, now I understand.
And then I moved it to the front, so.
Yes,
Kind of
we
misnomer.
wanted to add and move that to the.
So we don't have the D2 that goes with
number
number 8
8, yeah.
here.
Right.
But we'll get that ahead.
Yes.
Okay. All right, is that good? That answers? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Non-certificated personnel transportation. 4 items. Any comments or questions? Oh, and we have another retirement. Oh, number 4. All right, so we're gonna move to supplies, equipment, and services. Items 1 and 2, if anything shows up on your. Nothing, okay. All right. Transportation, items 1 and 2. Any comments or questions? Okay, and we're at miscellaneous, just note the days of the now being the 15th, and the regular meeting being the 29th. Okay, now under board secretary and board business, we have our district goals and board goals. I don't think we have any comments or questions, because everybody got those at least a couple of times in the last few weeks. Okay. I'm gonna open the floor to hearing of residents on any school district issue. Okay?
Has there been any more information about the sale of the Cheesequake School?
No, not,
Yes.
The policy change that was voted on last month, the one that I asked a question about, which involves moving the location of board meetings. Something that if I thought of it, I would have pointed out last month, is that the policy now requires organizations who are planning on having their members show up to the meeting to notify administration 48 hours in advance. One issue with that is that the agenda that lists the items that are going to be voted on at the meeting isn't even posted at that point. So an organization, whether it's the OBEA or SEPTA or anyone else, would have to decide if they think there's something going on that their members should turn out for before they have any idea what's being addressed at that meeting. So it's just something that I wanted to put out there for consideration by the board. You know, I know that policy was, I believe it's already been voted on, so it's in the books now, but there are obviously some possible problems there. Thank you.
right.
If it's an issue, it's something the board can certainly address.
So, you know, just in response to that, with Mr. Parr was saying that usually the meat and potatoes of something, it would be at the agenda meeting the week before. It's been the practice of this board not to put anything before the board that they don't know the week before that's a hot button or a hot topic issue. You know, anybody could have, I guess, an issue about any item, large or small. What it comes down to really is, you know, safety and being able to provide, without having to say to anyone, you can't come in. Because, you know, I know there's a lot of times where groups or organizations holding, they want to have a large turnout for something, but that transparency hasn't been both ways, where we're notified ahead of time just so we can make sure there's adequate space for everyone to come, and then when people come, they blame us for how come you didn't move it to the last minute. We don't monitor other people's social medias and what they do and what they're doing. So if we know ahead of time, we can say, yeah, everybody's welcome because we moved into a space that's adequate. Because if we don't know, and you know, there's also that time frame we take to move something too. So moving something just from a board meeting, just from the TV set room, the TV studio, to the auditorium takes a lot of man hours. Cameras have to be moved, the wiring has to be done. Steve Pajewski obviously has to be very involved in that, as well as teach classes during the day. So it takes, you know, a good amount of time to do it. So that's why we asked for at least a 48-hour turnaround. There was one meeting last year where that was the case, but school was closed on the Monday before because of a holiday of some nature, and we had a meeting on Tuesday. So it was just, you know, making sure that Steve could do it before we advertised it, that we were able to move it. But again, it shouldn't be a problem if everybody just says, you know, we're planning to have a large group there, and let us, you know, we're letting you know, giving you a heads up, so we can move it so everybody who wants to be heard can be heard.
The policy is more, it's a safety issue. I know there was one meeting towards the end of the year, that I believe, Dr. Holker.
Right, I wasn't there.
Right, you had an award ceremony, for your son, and we were shocked at the amount of people that were there. So it really comes down to public safety, not that, I don't think anybody's gonna say, no, you know, no, you can't come in. And then on the other hand, there was one, I remember the meeting that Mr. Citadino is referring to, that we didn't know, found out the last minute, and then people were upset that we didn't give them notice that we were moving the meeting. So, you know, it's kind of, it was kind of hard to make, you know, make everybody happy, but it really comes down to the safety of the public. We want everybody who's coming to a meeting to be safe, not to be, you know, squished into that little room and, you know, and to be uncomfortable. That last meeting, you know, there was nowhere near enough chairs, and it was SRO, you know, standing room only, and it went on for a while. I think that's what precipitated that, but anyway.
It not only works to a point, the board isn't ever going to ask members of the public to leave just because you want them to leave. It is an open public meeting by law. But if you exceed a fire marshal's limit, that's out of your hands. So if 100 people showed up tonight and we knew they were going to show up, we could facilitate that. It's about safety and occupancy and not having anyone turned away by powers beyond this board from a public meeting.
And we would get fined, right?
The school districts could get fined for violating the fire code, yeah, which is the last thing you want to do, because if everybody who's interested in being there lets us know, they can easily be accommodated and made safe.
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay. Gonna close that portion of the meeting. Any old business? Okay, new business.
I just have one thing. I don't know if my colleagues all saw my email about tomorrow. I know we're all invited to the Civic Center Memorial, but there's also one every year on the beach at Lawrence Harbor, if anybody's interested.
What time does that start?
I guess around 7 dusk-ish. There's no set time, right?
Okay.
You know, Civic Center at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that one knows it's six.
That beach is less formal.
Okay. I have a couple of things under new business. I started my list of events, to make it easier. The ones that I know about, so, there's a copy here for all the board members. If you wanna take a look at it and see if there's anything, else that you know about that I'll add to it. I know I did this last year. It was kind of like a rolling list of things that we were made aware of, where we've been invited or that, you know, might be nice to attend. And I'm just gonna put out there, besides the 9/11 ceremonies, the first thing is the Carl Sandburg Middle School rededication. Is it their 50th year? 50th year. That I believe everybody got an email several weeks ago from one of the secretaries over at Sandburg. That ceremony starts at 9 a.m. So anyway, so like we did in the past, if you have anything to add, and I'm gonna bring an updated one to every meeting.
Can you email it just too?
I can do that. I can do that. And just so y'all know, this is my paper. Not waste of paper. Okay. All right. And I have a slightly updated committee chart that I'm gonna pass around. And if anybody has any comments, let me know. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to, let Joanne know that's okay to put it up on.
Do we have enough copies for everybody?
Of the committee chart?
Yes.
No, I don't, I think I only have 20 copies. These are just the, you know, the committee chairs and the committee members that change every year among the board, and they'll be posted on the website so that everybody can get it. Okay, we spoke about curriculum technology meeting.
Yeah, so, you know, Jill and I were talking, and I think it came up some other conversations that several of us had. You know, things, board procedures that are things either we don't know about or we forget about. You know, we all do board training in the very beginning, but then it gets, you know, I don't remember what I did yesterday, so I forget, you know, some of the rules. So we were thinking, and especially when there's handoffs, either to president or committees, not knowing a lot of the history of how the committees may be run or whatever. So we were thinking about putting together for the board, and it's really just for us by us, putting a little handbook of, hey, here's some of the things to keep in mind, even though we get the training. So things like what votes need quorum, you know, different votes need different things, you know, even though, again, if you look at it on the website and stuff, a lot of the stuff's there, it's not like an easy to read consolidated thing. So we're thinking about maybe putting together a little handbook, going out to everybody in the committee saying, hey, can you just give us a little blurb about what your committee is and, you know, who's there, what to expect. And so just have like a little thing that we can use to hand down, either as people take on new roles or new people come in. Again, even though there's the bigger training, I mean, I know when I went my training, was that full day Saturday, you know, it's a little overwhelming the first time you step
Not even
into
gonna
that.
remember everything that was said
You
in
know,
something
and,
like that.
you know, all the dates, we get those typically once a year when Marianne from NJSBA comes in, but just a thing to put together,
That's a
so,
good idea.
yeah.
There's some interpretations
Yeah,
of how
to-
things are run have changed over the years.
Yeah.
Right. And I know it's
Good or
it's
bad or
hard,
whatever, it
Right.
doesn't matter, it's just.
it's hard as a, you know, as a new board member, there's, you know, there's things that everybody just kind of maybe assumes that you know and you don't. And, I, you know, when I started thinking about this, and it's not anybody's fault, but when we started to do the CSA evaluation, which was like March, April, May, Marianne very nicely handed me this little pamphlet, a folder of all of these great date timelines and stuff, you know, that you need to know as president. I said, well, that's great, but I've been president since January. And I got it in June, so, I mean, I guess that's what they're used to, because years ago, you know, when the elections were in April, you took over in June, so, anyways, so, in the next few weeks, we're gonna just reach out to everybody and just ask, you know, like a little blurb about your committee and, you know, kind of gear it towards if you were giving this to, you know, somebody brand new. Any question? No? Okay. Okay, and, the fall festival and the Sept tent or tree, not as a board, because we're not spending, district money, but as individual board members, we were asked if we would, like to participate in that. Want to get back to me and let me know if you want to participate in both of those, either or both. And, I think that's all I have. Did anybody else have any business?
So, I was just wondering, on our committees, we don't have something called long-range planning. And being,
Long-range and strategic plan.
okay, has that been, have we had meetings yet, or?
I don't think we've had a meeting since we had, because we're in the middle of our
It's kind of
long-range
going
and strategic
through.
plan. That community-driven one that we did a couple of years ago, where we came up with a 5-year plan, and we're kind of in the middle of that.
Because my only reasoning is that we know that the next few years are gonna be difficult. And again, new people coming on board, it would be good, I mean, it doesn't have to be firm, but we should at least let them know the direction we're heading in as far as the next couple of years and what we're gonna have to do. Okay, that's my thoughts.
You're talking about new board members coming up. Well, I would hope we would give them a copy of the strategic plan that we're in.
But this
right in the
this
middle
goes
of.
back to what we were talking about before, is you come on, there's so many things that come at you. It would be good for them to have at least enough, I mean, that's gonna be very important in the next few years.
Okay. Anybody else?
I did get a new policy Mr. Strauss, that's nice, so we have to have a policy.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we have a closed session.
Yes.
You have to. If it's on the officer's request, yes.
What, it was not.
Yeah, you have to, motion to go into exec for matters of school property security and attorney-client privilege.
Okay, so I need a motion to go into closed session.
Then we'll make a motion, to go into closed session, Madam President, to discuss exactly what this department is related.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Can I have a second, please? I know Sal wants to make that.
No, I don't.
No, sounds one.
Okay, thank you.
Matters of school property.
All those in favor? All those in favor?
Okay.
You're welcome.